Hello, I am Chris VanderKaay. I am the creator and star of Ask and Go to Sleep, and I am here today to share my 5 horror movies that made me. Now, I will say right off the bat, a couple of these might seem like cheats to you guys, but I'm sorry, these are the ones that made me, so I have to use them. So let's dive in. Now, I know most people probably don't think of Return to Oz, the sequel to The Wizard of Oz, to be a horror film, but if you were a child when you first saw it, it absolutely is a horror film. Go back, look at this thing. The Gump, the characters like the Wheelers in there. There's the sand that turns people into sand. There's all kinds of terrifying stuff in there. But more than that, I was raised in a very conservative Christian household. I was actually not allowed to watch horror movies. I wasn't even allowed to see anything above PG. So movies like this really hit a very specific spot for me because I was drawn to the dark stuff, but I wasn't allowed to see the dark stuff. So I had to grab the stuff that could sneak in through Disney. That's who did it. Walt Disney had a period where they were doing dark Disney movies, and this was one of my favorite ones, and it was absolutely one of the ones that shaped me in my interest in watching horror movies. Now, the second movie that shaped me is Tremors from Ron Underwood, and there's many things that I love about this movie, but the first time I saw this, it was actually the edited cut for television, which, by the way, there's not a ton cut out. I think a little bit of language, but anyway, I saw this on TV, and this really sort of changed my world in terms of understanding that you can do scary and you can do funny at the same time. And that is something I've tried to have a sense of humor in some of my movies. I don't really make comedies, but I do try to have a sense of character-based comedy in my stories to relieve a little bit of the stress. But the most important lesson I learned from Tremors with the characters of Val and Earl in Tremors is that if you have really likable characters whose journeys you want to go on and who you want to see make it through the story, it's all the more effective for anything else that you want to do, scares-wise, anything like that. So this was a truly formative movie for me in understanding that likable characters or characters you care about are things that will oftentimes take you through journeys that are difficult in other capacities. Okay, for number 3, anybody who knows me knows that I am a big fan of found footage. I've made a TV series called Found Footage Finds. I made 2 found footage movies, so I love found footage. I always thought that Blair Witch Project was probably the first found footage or fake doc movie that I saw, but I had forgotten about this one, this little art house gem that came out in '92. I definitely saw it before I saw Blair Witch Project, and I loved this movie. It is very dark. There's some super uncomfortable sequences, and in fact, there's some stuff that's cut from certain versions of it. So if you might not have even seen the whole film, depending on which version that you saw. But I love this movie because this is again a balance of very dark storytelling and very broad comedy. Or very, very funny comedy, not necessarily broad. But this guy, Benoit Poelvoorde, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, fantastic performance. Arguably, I think this movie was probably more influential for found footage films, particularly like ones driven by a single personality. Movies like Creep, I felt like I definitely leaned into this a bit with Ask, and there are other movies, Long Pigs, that were all very influenced by this film because he's such a fascinating personality to watch. So, amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend checking it out. Now, number 4 is They Look Like People, which is a much more recent film than any of the other films on the list. But the reason is because this is the movie that made me as a filmmaker. Now, this movie, it came out in, I want to say, maybe 2014, 2015, somewhere around there, directed by Perry Blackshear, and it's a micro-budget film. Literally only cost a couple $1,000s. It's a 3-hander. There's basically 3 characters in it. It's a story about toxic masculinity and healthy male friendships and mental illness, and, not stigmatizing it. But what it really did for me is it looked like a movie that was made inexpensively. It doesn't look cheap, but it looks like it wasn't expensive, but it's a fantastic movie. It punches above its weight. It's really smart and sensitive with 3 great performances, and that's not something you often get from low-budget films. And that's why I loved it so much, and this was the movie that actually sent me on the journey, inspired me to want to end up making films myself. I mean, I'd always wanted to make films, but I was trying to get other people to make my scripts. This is the first one I was like, well, I guess I could just do it myself, like just go make it myself. I don't have to find a budget, I can just make it. So this movie is responsible for that. So that is definitely a movie that made me. Okay, I told you there were going to be a couple of cheats. So for the number 1 here, Midnight Mass. This is the reason it's a cheat. It's because it's one of the most important pieces of media that I have encountered. It's very recent, but in a way it's interesting because it is full circle for me in terms of a story. I already mentioned that I had a conservative background, that I wasn't able to watch horror movies as a kid, And this combines so many things that are important to me. I still have faith, though not the same faith I was raised with. That has changed quite a bit. And this is a show that talks about the idea of genuine faith versus weaponized faith, and the cruelty that comes with the second kind, the way that people can misinterpret things and make those the centerpiece of their belief systems in a way that's dangerous to others. And also, it's just a really clever reinvention of a specific kind of a monster horror storytelling. Fantastic cast. I love pretty much everything Mike Flanagan has ever made. He's probably, arguably for me, the most important filmmaker of the new millennium. And and so this was a defining piece of work for me. So is it technically a movie? It's a 7-episode miniseries, but it is one giant story, and it is one of the most important ones for me. So this is my number 5, or this is my number 1, and thank you for letting me share.